You were in? You were in something, didn't you?
No, I was walking by. I saw you. I want to say about the next door, but I want to go on.
In the company.
Steve was translating the directions.
Okay.
You used it because I gave you Benjamin Franklin. You brought back to me in different denominations.
I can see much more. Look at this, so many people like it.
Oh, when yeah. That's Adam Costello.
Most likely, definitely. That can't be. That's like nothing. The very likely it's done that. That sort of, with very cool. Yeah. Went to work,
I bike to work. I bike halfway back and then the train from time to time. No. Hello, the train here now. Train.
I work for Aid Pharmacy. It's a event. We're talking about making the woman's
Already somebody called me today.
Yeah.
Especially the couple that got killed Friday night.
Right.
Is that related to me?
Why? Because of the
I say,
left.
why you think so? Because they are the
So who
same.
got killed on Friday night? A husband, a wife, and the kids?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
We can hear the road, but it's not playing on the big screen. 1 second.
One family?
Please let me know if you can hear when you can hear me.
We hear you now. We hear the road now.
I hear you.
Where are you and your kid?
Yeah, I put the microphone on. I put it on microphone instead of saying the system.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you.
Now you hear me? Okay, very good. Okay, very good. Okay, Baruch Hashem. Okay, thank you very much for joining tonight. We're together from Chabad of Houston to Chabad in Midwood Flatbush. Okay, so we want to do a Rashi Sicha. First, it's a special week, and I hope the Hachona Shabbos in Beis Menachem Mendel was good. It's a special Shabbos Hachona. The Frierdiker Rebbe, I'm telling a story from Reb Fola Khan, the father from Rabbi Yoel Khan. The father Rabbi Yoel Khan was a chassid of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and he actually told a story when his mother was pregnant, and they were in Dacha, and the Frierdiker Rebbe was very young at that time, and she was climbing up a hill on a Friday with a baby on one hand and with a chicken on the other hand to go to the shoichet. And Frierdiker Rebbe was sitting on his porch at Shabbos. He was being Mavasedra, and he sees a young mother schlepping. She's pregnant with a chicken. And on the spot, he took out a chalaf and he shechted the chicken for her. Anyway, the Rabbi Yoel Khan's father tells a story like this. His he was sick, Rahman al with typhus, right in 1920, when the Frierdiker Rebbe became a Nazi. And then his father was Nebuch sick. And even though he was sick himself, but he took care of his father. His father at some point asked him to go to the Beis Harav in Rostov and to bring a kvittel for him, bring a pidyon nefesh. He came to the house of the Rebbe Rashab, of the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Rebbe Rashab, and he brought he brought the pan, and he waited. The Frierdiker Rebbe came out of his room, and the Frierdiker Rebbe asked him, "What would you like?" And he handed him the pan. Frierdiker Rebbe refused to take it. Kilu, he's not a Rebbe. And he asked, he says, "Why don't you go to the oil?" And the Frierdiker Rebbe said, "I know you're recovering from this terrible machla and you can't go to the mikveh, so ask your younger brother to go to the oil, to the Tzina Kodesh of my father, the Rebbe Rashab, to bring the kvittel, to bring the pan." So there was an elder chassid, Reb Shmuel Gurari, who was a pikeach also. He says, "Fair, a klein ingel soll gehen bringen a pan zum Reben." So the Frierdiker Rebbe turns to him, "What's wrong? A kind, bet for sein Tate, like, couldn't be better. A child is davening for his father." So that's what Reb Shmuel was waiting for. He said, "Nu, ihr seid techechet a kind von a Tate." In other words, you're the son of a Rebbe. And the Frierdiker Rebbe took out his hand, and he was masking. That was the first pound that he took. Anyway, this is a story about the Frierdiker Rebbe, starting of his Nasias. We know that Rebbe himself was many Gdoli Yisrael that way, that were Bereich and covered in the strongest possible way. And this week we're making Achona for Yud Shvat, and they shall helfen that the Achonas that we make should be strong, and should have its pull on us on everything from in Yerushalayim, v'chulu v'chulu. Okay, we're learning a Rashi Sicha, a classic Rashi Sicha, beautiful Rashi Sicha. It's on the Oz Yosher. It's on several of the psukim. I hope you have a chumash. I text earlier Peretz that we should have chumashim. If you don't yet have a chumash, please get a chumash. We're in Parshas Beshallach in the Oz Yosher, and we want to cover Pasuk Yudalid, Tezvav, and Tezayin. So basically, Tezvav, Pedek, Tezvav, and Pasuk Tezvav. You have a chumash?
Almost.
Okay, good. So at the end of the Oz Yosher, the Yidden are saying like this: Shama amim yegozun, chil ochaz yoshve feloshes. Oz nivhalu alufei Edom, elei moyav yochazei merod, namoigu kol yoshve chnoan. With several lashonos of fear that the nations heard about the Kriyas Yamsuf, and number one, Yergoza, number two, there was Achil, number three, there was Nivhalu, number four, Yacha Zemerod, and number five, Namoigu. There's a five lashonos that, like Namoigu, they melted from fear. Tipul aleim Marosov afachad, begedol zerech yidmu ko'oven. Another two expressions that should fall on them, and ema and afachad. They should be like a rock. Ad yava amcha Hashem, ad yava mzukan nisa. What is the meaning at the end of the pasuk? As we'll see soon in Rashi, that the fear should stay in their heart, and ad yava amcha Hashem, until they're over in the Yarden and they come to conquer the nations, the seven nations in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, let's do a few Rashis, and we'll focus on one Rashi, obviously, but let's go back a little bit. Let's just go to Tezvav. The people of Edom and Moab, why were they scared? The Yidden were not coming to kill them because the Yidden were not allowed to kill them. The Yidden were told not to conquer Edom and Moab. Not to conquer Edom and Moab. But they were scared. They were upset. Next Rashi, Namoigu means namasu. They melted. Berevivim tu moigagno. Omru aleinu heimboim lachaloiseinu v'lidushes artzeinu. That the 7 nations, they melted. They just melted from fear. Alufei Edom is oznivhalu alufei Edom. Elei moyev yechazei meiroat. So Edom and the Moya was Road. Edom was only Nivhalu. And Moya was a little more, was Road. I'm just saying pshat, based on what Rashi's saying before we got to the Sicha, is because we know that the Eibush said that they're allowed to be mefached Moya, but Edom they're not allowed to touch altogether. So Edom had the least amount of fear. They only had a Bahala. Moab had more of a fear. They had the Road. Road means they trembled. The Yoshvi Knan, the 7 nations in Canaan, no Moigu, they melted. They melted like wax. They melted. Their hearts melted to tremble because they knew Aleim Hein Bohim. Okay, next pasuk, which is really, this is the Rashi we're going to focus on, the next 2 Rashis. Tipul Aleim Eimasa, Zok Rashi, Eimasa is al ha-rechoikim. Pachad is al ha-kroivim. Why was the Rashi's bothered by the double lashon a mosav afachat? In the previous Rashi, there's 3 expressions, but you already understand that Rashi, based on what he told you, you already understand the difference of the 3 expressions. One is nifhalu is for Edom, and the other is roa, that's for Moav, and the highest level of fear in the Moigu is for Yoshvik Chanon. Avos mitnam all a new thing in this pasuk, and what's the difference of a mosav afachat? So Rashi says a masa means ala rachoikim, pachad is ala kroivim, shein shenem, as it says in the pasuk, when the spies of Yeshua came to Rochav and they stayed in their house, and she told them kishamana es shahoivish Hashem, that we heard that this is in Yeshua and Beis Yud. She said we heard that the Eibishter, we heard all the miracles that the Eibishter did for the Yidden. Just like the Lashon here, Namoigu. Kishamanu, Eis asher hoivis Hashem esmei yamsum pneichem, betzeichem mitzrayim. And sheds vayishma vayimas lovavenu. That so we see it worked. The fear worked. The fear factor worked in the favor of the Jews. She said that it was so strong that loikama odruach beish mipneichem. Rashi says over there in Yeshua that she was a zoina for 40 years. Afila lishka v'misha. She knew that the people were so nervous that lately, when the Yidden were crossing the Yarden, people couldn't even be shoicha with an isha. That's how trembling they were. They were in such fear. They were in such fear that they couldn't even be shoicha. Amru ein lecha kol sar v'nogid shaloi bo el rochav hazoyna. Bas eser shonim hoysik shos Yisrael mitzrayim v'zon kol arbaim shana. It's a Gemara in Zvachim Daf Kuf Tazayin. So that's the raya that Rashi brings. A fairly easy Rashi, but the truth is, all the Mefarshim, the problem is obvious, and all the Mefarshim talk about it. But before we get to the problem, and Rashi just finish the next 2 Rashis. Ad Yaver. What's the double lashon? Ketargumoin. If you look in the Targum, it says. The Targum says that there were 2 things. Adi aver amcha Hashem yos aroina. Adi aver amcha denan di parekto yos yardeina. There was a double ocean until the Oren of the Eibishter will cross, until the Yidden will cross the Yarden, that the fear will stay. which is remarkable. For 40 years, the going were trembling from the Yidden. That fear factor helped the Yidden conquer Eretz Yisrael. As Rochav told them, when they heard this from Rochav, they didn't anymore look how they're going to conquer the land and what they're going to do, because they realized that because when it comes to war, fear factor is the most important thing. If the enemy is scared, then you have the upper hand. We want to dedicate the Shiur for the Kedoshim, Rachmana litzlan, that were killed B'nei Avla, and Erev Shabbos Kodesh, and Eretz HaKodesh, and Yerushalayim Yir HaKodesh. The Rebbe always said that the most important thing is the fear factor. The fear factor, that's why the Rebbe always said that the oldest negotiations with terrorists is the worst thing. And then they're not scared. And the whole halachelach of the Israeli government vis-a-vis terrorists is taking away the fear factor. And the most important thing with an enemy is the fear factor. When the Meraglim from Yeshua saw that these people are trembling in the hazen, trembled in the hazen, in simple Yiddish, that Rochav said that they couldn't have Kishur Ladas. So they said, we have nothing to look, we have nothing to. That's it. We conquered the land, and that's it. That's the attitude they went. They went back to Yeshua, went and they conquered Eretz Yisrael. So this is really what happened, and the fear stayed for 40 years. Okay, beautiful Rashi, nothing wrong. The old Mefarshim ask, is something wrong? Why would the pasuk say that first there should be an aim on the rechoikim and then the kroivim? Wouldn't you? I mean, when there's a terrifying event that happens, who is the person that trembles first? The person that is close to the event. If there's an accident, Rachmana litzlan, and people die, Rachmana litzlan, who trembling first? The people on the scene. The people that hear about it later, they maybe also have a fear, but it's not the same. The people that are close to the event, they should be the first ones. Okay, so the Mefarshim, the same Mefarshim, all the Mefarshim ask this question, and many of them give the similar teretz. They say that the pshat is that Rashi already said. Rashi said in Parshas. By the way, and Takazoi, if you look in the Mechilta, the Rashbi, it says a mosa la kroivim v'fachad ala rechoikim, and the Barbeinu Mechai also says al derech pshat a mosa la kroivim v'fachad ala rechoikim, and that makes sense. You should first talk about the kroivim and then the rechoikim. Why would Rashi pick an opposite? True, there's another Mechilta that says the opposite of the Mechilta that Rashbi. But first of all, as we said, Rashi doesn't quote Midrashim. It's not a collection of nice Midrashim. He's just saying the pshat. Why would he pick a girsa and say something which is the opposite of pshat? Typically, if there's a double elation, the first one is on the kroivim and the second one on the rechoikim. So the Mefarshim will say, because really there's a Rashi, you have to look in Parshas Eikev, and the pasuk Pachtachem u'meirachem yitin Hashem on the nations of the world. Rashi says Pachtem u'meirachem haloi pachad u'moira du pachad. So what's the double lashon pachad u'moira? Ela pachtachem ala kroivim. Moirachem ala rechoikim. And now she explains, Pachad, Loshen, Biasis, Pisim, Moira, Loshen, Daiga, Miyamim, Yomima. Okay, so L'chaida, maybe it's a little better with the light. So l'chaida, the pshat is like this. Rashi over here, it says tipul aleim Marosov afachad. So Rashi wants to say, based on his pshat, so pachad has to be a stronger fear. So the kroivim had a stronger fear. Therefore, he says Marosov, which is the lesser fear. Al derechoikim and pachad of the kroivim. So what all the Mefarshim say is true, but that just accentuates the question. So Hagufa, why did the pasuk say first talk about the fear that went on the rechoikim and then on the kroivim? Shouldn't we talk first about the fear that came on the kroivim and then the rechoikim? True, mitzad the words of Rashi, Rashi says, Ema means a lesser fear. Pacha, if you're going to say that way. Okay, but Hagufa, what's the pshat? Why does the pasuk first say the a masa, which is ala rechoikim, and then pachad and the kroivim? You should talk about the kroivim first. Okay, so the Rebbe says like this. This is all beautiful pshat. I want to tell you, if you look at the not mugad Sicha, it's interesting how the Rebbe used to think through. The Rebbe came up with a mahalach and Rashi in Pshut Shemikra, even though we have north of 400 meforshim on Rashi and Pirush Rashi ala Torah. And the Rebbe came up with a mahalach that Rashi, like many times we talk about this, that Rashi didn't just make a collection of midrashim, that there was a shita in how to learn Pshut Shemikra that Rashi had. And many times the Rebbe thought things over, and then he changed the pshat. It's interesting. And here, the Rebbe gave a pshat. He doesn't even bring it in the Mugad Sicha. Also a very nice pshat. But here in the Likutei Sicha, the Rebbe brings two pshatim, and they're both terrific pshatim. Both the first one is mamish terrific pshat. If you read the pasuk, read first the Tezvav and then Tezayin. One is B'loshen Oven and the other is B'loshen Osid. The pasuk Tezvav says, "Oz nivhalu alufi admei chazemoi rodna moigu kol yoshvechnon." This is something that already happened. Now, it could be while they went out of Mitzrayim, the moment they crossed the Yamsuf. It could be the people of Edom and Moav didn't get. They didn't get instant messaging, didn't get 24-hour news cycles. There wasn't cameras and stuff that maybe took a little bit of time for news to spread to Alufei Edom, to Eile Moav, to Yoshvech Noan. But the Yidden were saying, as Rashi said, that Rosh Shivcha Layam, Masharo Ro Gedol Anavim, the Eibishter was Nigla Leim B'chvoide Be'atzmoi. The whole Shida was said B'derech Nevuah. It's something very special. I mean, we say the Shida Sayam, we say it, that the Septa says we should say it every day. And the Alter Rebbe brings Al Aloch, and that's Minne Kol Yisrael, that we say the Shida every day. The Yidden said it B'derech Nevuah. So they said B'derech Nevuah that, but that was already as if it happened already, because they already crossed, and as soon as the Edom, Moav, and Yoshech Noam will hear, they'll be struck with fear. They'll be struck with fear. So, Oznev Halu, Lashon yesterday. Lashon Avar, Lashon yesterday. Tezayin is really a nevuah or a tefillah and a bakosha. The Yidden were asking the Eibishter that please, the Rebbeinu Shalom, Tipay Laleim, please, Eibishter, make sure that it will fall onto them a Marosov Afachad, an unbelievable fear, B'gedoil Zareach, when they see the strength of your arm, Yidmut Ka'avan, they should be doimen lo even, they should be struck with such fear that they should freeze in terror like a rock, and that terror should stay in their hearts. Ad Yaver Amcha Hashem Ad Yaver Zuka Nisa, till they over the Yarden to conquer them. And the truth is, in retrospect, it turned out to be a long time. It's 40 years. It was a miracle that this fear stayed for so long. So either it was a nevuah, and that's exactly what happened, as we see what the story with the Rochav and the spies of Yeshua, or it was a tefillah and it was accepted. Be it as a may, it's a bakosha or a tefillah or a nevuah. Pasuk Tes Vav is about yesterday. Pasuk Tezayin is about tomorrow. Rashi now wants to explain what's the double Lashon Marosov Afachad. So by the way, here you know the difference between Pasuk Tes Vav and Tezayin. One was about yesterday, one is about tomorrow. Okay. What's the double Lashon? So he explains a Marosov Afachad. One is for the Rechoikim, one is the Kroivim. Who are they concerned about right now when they're asking the Eibishter Bakosha that when they come into Eretz Yisrael, that the nations in Eretz Yisrael should be trembling from them? Those nations are right now the Rechoikim, and those are what they're really concerned about. Their first Bakosha to the Eibishter is Tipol Aleim Eimosa on the Rechoikim, the 7 nations that are Rochek. The Kroivim, who are the Kroivim? The Kroivim are probably the Plishtim, like it says, Loinochem Eretz, Derech Eretz Plishtim Ki Koroivu. The Plishtim are very close to them. Who else is close to them? The Amalek is very close to them. Amalek is Yoshev Banegev. The Negev of Eretz Yisrael is very close to Midbar Amim, to where the Jews are standing right now by Kriyas Yamsuf. So for them, it's not so important that they should be in fear. Now, it's also good for them to be scared, because if the whole world is scared from a certain nation, it helps, because fear breeds fear. So the fact that the whole world is scared of Am Yisrael, that will add to their success in the conquest of Eretz Yisrael. However, the first bakosha is Tipol Aleim Emosa to the Rechoikim, those that are right now far, miles and miles away from us, 100 miles from us. The 7 nations in Eretz Yisrael. But we also want there should be a pachad on the Kroivim. And maybe the Kroivim have a stronger, they see it, so the pachad is stronger. But that's a secondary request. It's not so important. The most important is that the 7 nations should be trembling. But it's good that the whole world should have a pachad. Agavurche, the Rebbe asks, so how come we see that Amalek, which was from the Kroivim, was not scared of Bnei Yisrael, and they came to fight against the Yidden? Where if be'emes, if it's an avua, if you say it's a bakosha, okay, but if it's an avua, and even if it's a bakosha, we see the Eibishter did fulfill the bakosha. So what happened with the Kroivim, which is Amalek? How come nothing happened with them? How come Amalek had no fear? So the answer is that we have in this week's parsha, and Yud Zayin, look further a little bit in Yud Zayin Ches. So the Yidden were punished. It says in Yud Zayin Ches that the Yidden said, "Ayesh Hashem b'kirbeinu im oyin." The Yidden said, "Do it. Is the Eibishter here?" So they give a whole mashal with the dog. That's why Vayove Amalek Vayalachem Yisrael. The Eibishter said, "You asked, Hayesh Hashem. You asked a question. You'll see what happens when you ask such a question." So this was a heavenly blessing that the Goyim should be scared of the Yidden, and because they said Hayesh Hashem b'kirbeinu in oyin, so therefore that's what happened with Amalek. But Bechlalus, the bakosha was accepted, and the nations of the world trembled from the Yidden, and Ad Yaver Am Hashem, Ad Yaver Am Zukonisa. So that's one pshat. Okay, so let's summarize the first pshat. That what Rashi is saying, again, the question is, when Rashi says the double Lashon Marosov Afachad, why would he say Amos is under the Choikim and Pach and the Kroivim? Shouldn't you first talk about the Kroivim? And the answer is, when they're standing now and they're going out of the Yamsuf. So we already spoke in Pasuk Tezvav what happened now, what happened yesterday, what happened just now. We're asking about kosher, saying in Nevuah what will happen in 40 years. And now we're concerned that we want to ask the Eibishter that there should be, that the nations that are in Eretz Yisrael, that they should tremble, that the Choikim should tremble. And also, it wouldn't hurt that everyone trembles, that even the Kroivim that were witnessed, Kriyas Yamsuf, that were struck with an unbelievable pachad, which pachad is even bigger than Ema, that pachad should stay in their heart 40 years later, because that would help to breed uncertainty and fear from the strength of Klal Yisrael, and will help them in the conquest of Eretz Yisrael. This is the first pshat. Let's go to the second pshat, the Rebbe, and let's try to do it quickly. The Mefarshim ask, that Rashi brings a raya, ki inyan shenemar, ki shamanu es asher hoivish. Who are the ones that said ki shamanu es asher hoivish? Those were the 7 nations in Canaan. Those were the Rechoikim. So why is it the shenemar? But it sounds like it's going on the Kroivim, which is the Kroivim is the Plishtim and the Amalek. But Kishamanu is not the Molek, is not the Plishtim. So many of the Mefarshim say the Shenema goes on the Rechoikim. And really, it's a mistake. Vafachel is not a new Dibur Maschel. And the Rebbe adds to it, that's why the Rashi is not just teaching the words Eima and Pachel. That's what Rashi also quotes in Dibur Maschel, Tipul Aleim. Look in the Rashi. Tipul Aleim. Rashi is trying to give the general pshat in the pasuk. Tipul Aleim Mosov Vafachad. There's a Mosov, Ala Rechoikim, Pachel Ala Kroivim. And he brings a pasuk, a general pasuk that shows you, the Rebbe brings, you see, there's a Pirush from Anashi, from Rabbi Yosef Kulon. Rabbi Yosef Kulon was one of the very important poskim, and considered from the last Rishonim, and then brought in the Beis Yosef and Shulchan Aruch al Kol Tzad Vishal. The Marik wrote a Pirush on Rashi. I'll show you the how Gedolei Yisrael was so metiachas to Rashi, and he writes that this raya is al shneim hein al ema ve'hein al pacha. Okay. But it's a little, but the Damas is even in the Marik itself. So we see that the Marik thinks that the Shenema goes on both, and that would make sense most. So how does this pasuk Kishamanu go on both? So the Rebbe says like this: you could say, what does it mean Kroivim and Rechoikim? When we say Kroivim and Rechoikim, you could mean not only in space, a mile away or 100 miles away. We just said before that what's in the pasuk Tezvav, the difference of the three expressions. Is because Edom and Moav were not so scared as much as the people of Canaan, because they knew that the Yidden were not coming for them. They knew the Yidden were not coming for them. So they were like the Rechoikim. They were not so, they were nicht as a Baldover. The Kroivim, those were close to the issue, were the 7 nations in Canaan, and then you could say Tipul Aleim Masa Ala Rechoikim, because the Rechoikim geographically were closer to the Yam Suf and heard first the news. Then a stronger pachat fell on the Kroivim. The Kroivim means those are Korev La'inyan, the 7 nations of Canaan, and over there they were struck with a stronger fear because it was relevant to them. The Aleim Ein Boyim. Kinyan Shenema, and the pasuk says, and the Inyan Shenema Beika goes on the Kroivim, which is the 7 nations of Canaan, Kishaman Es Asher Hoivish, which is a very good pshat. And this is the Bekitz of the Rebbe's second pshat. Agav Urcha, in the Sicha, when the Rebbe spoke about it, the Rebbe mentioned that we have to understand also the Medrash. It's interesting that because the Medrash says 2 rayas and psukim that we see 40 years later that was still is trembling in fear. The first pasuk is Shenemar, it Keinyan Shenemar, Vahi Kishmoy Kol Malchei Amoreh Shebeva Yarden, V'chein Rocha V'meres L'Shucha Yeshua Kishaman Es Asher Hoivish. How come Rashi doesn't bring the first raya and only brings the second raya? So the truth is, verstandig. The first raya was not talking about Kriyas Yamsuf, it was talking about the Kriya of the Yarden. Now we're talking about Kriyas Yamsuf. So the Shaila is fakert. So how come Mechilta doesn't bring a raya from Kriyas Yarden to Kriyas Yamsuf? Mayin Shmita it's Sinai. Tak it's a Rashi Sicha. We're trying to understand Rashi. We understand the Mechilta too. The Rebbe says it's funny. Sometimes we make Pilpula and Mashpal Tahor, but sometimes we're learning Medrash Chazal and it's a klotz kasha. It's like it's an obvious question, and then sometimes we gloss over a klotz kasha. The Rebbe says the answer is simple. Because the pasuk says that when Moshe Rabbeinu sent the shluchim to Melech Edom, Edom said, "Lo taver bi, pem b'cherev eitzer likrosecha, v'yetz Edom likrose b'am kavod b'yot chazaka." So we see he wasn't scared. But the pasuk says they will tremble of the Jews, but we see Edom was not scared. So now here's the difference of how it's learned in Pshat and learned in Drush. In Pshat, you could say that the pasuk said, "Who's going to tremble?" Eilei Moav, Alufei Adam, and Eilei Moav. A child already learned in Parshas Vayishlach that there was a difference between Malchei Adam and Alufei Adam. Alufim are the ministers, governors, but they're not kings. There's Alufei Adam, there's Eilei Moav, and then there is Malchei Adam and Malchei Moav. So just like we see with Paroi, the Paroi himself didn't tremble. His people were scared. Why? Either because he was a king, so he was a big chutzpahyak, and he was fearless because he was a king, or because by Paroi we could say that the Eibishter punished him and therefore made his heart heavy, and he couldn't face the obvious. Be it as it may, it's just like we see by Paroi that the Khartoumim were scared, the Avdei Paroi was scared, but Paroi himself was not scared. Here too, we could say that Alufei Adam Eila Moav, they were Nivhalu and they were Yerchazei Meirad, but the Malachim not, the kings not. That's one way to learn it, and then maybe that's the way Rashi learned it. It's nice, but the Mechilta Medrash Chazal says no. And you could say that really the Malchei Edom and also Moav, which went to hire Bilam to put a klolachatz, a hepach habracha on the Yidden, they were trembling. It's just that, it's like Rashi brings that you're going to come with your koyach of Yaakovin. I'm going to come. B'aftochas keinenu v'yadayim yedei Esav. I'm going to ani eitza aleichem b'masher risheni obi b'achar b'chatichya. So he wasn't scared because of the aftocha of his Zayda. Or maybe he was scared, but he still couldn't help himself. Okay. And now, but the Mechilta wants to bring a raya. Like the pasuk says that when there was Kriyas Yamsov, who was Nivhalu, who was Zechazei Merod, was the Alufei Adam and Eli Moav. But the Malchei Edom and the Malchei Moav, the pasuk doesn't say. So now, in the next pasuk that talks in the future, that we say that Tipul Aleim Marosov Afachat. How do we know that this Marosov Afachat fell also on the Malchei Edom and the Malchei Moav? So therefore, he says that, a story from the Yarden. But the Yarden, the pasuk says Befedish. By the Yarden, the pasuk says Befedish in Yeshua. Malachim also trembling. Even it's not talking about Kriyas Yamsov, but it's a davar alamid minyana in Drash we could learn. Just like when the Eibishter made B'Kriyas Hayarden, also the Malachim were trembling. So when there was the Kriyas Yamsov, even though the pasuk only spoke about Eli Moav, Alufei Adam Eli Moav, also the Malachim were trembling. But in Pshat, the Hotnishkenort, as I in Pshat, this whole thing. So Rashi, that's why Rashi doesn't bring the first pasuk. When he wants to bring it out, the 40 years later, they're still trembling, he brings it from Rochav. Because it says Befedish. In Rochav, it says that they were trembling because the Yidden they remembered how the Yidden passed the Yamsuf, and that's what it says Befedish in the pasuk. Kishamanu Eisa Sher Hoivish Hashem Esmei Yamsuf Mipnechem Mitzeichem Mitzrayim. Vanishma v'yimis l'vavenu v'loi kama oid ruach b'ish mipneichem Kashem elekechem hu elekim Hashem ha'alaretz mitochas. So therefore Rashi wants to bring only this pasuk and doesn't want to bring the other pasuk. But the Medrash, who wants to accentuate and wants to go into the neshama thing, tells you should know really that the Malachim were also scared. And I bring you a raya that just like by the B'Kriyas Hayarden, which was perhaps less spectacular than Kriyas Yamsuf, that all the Malachim of Hamoidi were trembling. So why would you say that the Malachim of Edom and Moav were less? Probably it's the same thing, and that's what the Mechilta said. Pshat, it doesn't sit that well. Pshat, and therefore Rashi doesn't bring that ayah. Only brings the second pasuk, which is clear, which is the story of Rochav and Yeshua. It says clearly that they were trembling 40 years later from the Kriyas Yamsuf. Okay. So I think we straightened out the Rashi. And as usual, it's a beautiful, it's a shine, Toidas Emes. Toidas Emes, I said, Befiu. We see in the Rashi, the Mahalach that the Rebbe showed us how to learn a Rashi. Pshat, that we look into every pasuk and we keep in mind what the Torah already told us, because there's even not one detail. If the Torah tells us in Vayishlach there's a difference of Malchei Adam and Alufei Adam, it's very later going to be relevant. V'chulu. So, okay, so we see the Pshat and Rashi, and it's for Emfet Ala Kashas from the Mefarshim. Bottom line is, it was a spectacular miracle, And not only that, at the moment when the Yidden went out of Mitzrayim, that Alufei Edom, Elei Moav, Yeshvik Noam were trembling, but 40 years later they were still trembling, and that fear factor is the most important edge in winning a war. That's the most important edge in winning a war. Ask Mr. Putin; he'll tell you. He wants that the world should tremble from him. If the world would tremble from him, well, Shemashiach gekommen. But no, the world is not trembling from him. But the Eibishter made a miracle for the Yidden. The world was trembling from them, and that's what won the war. That's what helped them in the conquest of Eretz Yisrael. So we mentioned in the introduction to the Shiur, the Beshallach, that also in our enemies today, that there should be that unbelievable fear of Bnei Yisrael Am Keroiva, and L'chol Bnei Yisrael even in the last few minutes in Golus. Let's talk about the Iroh and Avodas Hashem. The Rebbe always would say a Sicha, would finish off the Iroh and Avodas Hashem. What we can learn, we learned a nice Geshmak Rashi, that there was a Tipal Aleim and Marosov Fachad. Let's say, according to the first pshat or the second pshat, that there was a aim of a fachad that fell on the nations in the most important, the ones that were in Canaan, and lesser importance, all the other nations also had fear from Bnei Yisrael Am Karev, and that helped them win the war when they conquered Eretz Yisrael. Well, how does that help us in Avodas Hashem? And what does it mean in Avodas Hashem? Every Yid has the war with the 7 nations. We spoke about this recently. The war with the 7 nations, the 7 midas, the bad midas, the Sheva midas Roz that come to us from the Nefesh Bahamas. We have to conquer them and bring them into Tachas Mamshalos HaKadusha. I'm not sure which Maimah you learned over Shabbos from Bossi Lagani. You let me know, Mitzvah Shem, tomorrow when I get to New York. If you didn't learn yet the second Maimah Bossi Lagani, it's a very avoidic Maimah about conquering the Mata. So a beautiful word he brings from the Baal Shem Tov, that Sur Me'ra ve'asei toiv, Sur Me'ra, to go away from Me'ra. And then the second, the higher level is the Baal Shem Tov, V'asei esara toiv, Sur Me'ra, go away from Me'ra. And then even more, take that Ra itself and turn it into toiv. Okay, that's the Avodas Hashem, conquering the 7 nations. Mashiach will come. We're going to conquer also the 3 nations, which is the Chochmah Bina Das. Within the enemies of the Yidden in the Birur Hamidos, there is the Kroivim and there is the Rechoikim. The Kroivim is that Midas Roz, that's every Yid you're born with. That's Beteva, that when the Yid has an Nefesh Bahamas, that he should have these bad Midas, and these are certain Avedas that are likely that a person should be Nichshel. And that's what a person has to deal with. Then there is the Rechoikim, the Taivas Roz that really, mitzad the Etzem Teva of the Nefesh HaBahamis of a Yid, it's out of the question. It's Mufrach Gamri. It's not something that a Yid would entertain. But Rachmana litzlan, then sometimes the Yitzhak Shalom is Gabriel of Kol Yoim, and after falling through so many, giving in to the Yetzer Hara, Nefesh Bahamas and Taivas Heter, he gets lost sometimes, Rachmana litzlan, and carried away in Taivas Isur and things that are Rechoikim. So Chazal say, if the Eibishter wouldn't help it, we couldn't. We have to turn to the Eibishter betfila and sich beten the Rachmim, the Eibishter to help us out in our Avodas Hashem. And when we turn to the Eibishter and we ask him for Rachmim, he helps us. But we have to turn to the Eibishter with a bakoshe and a tefillah and sich beten the Rachmim beim Eibishter, help uns arois, nehmen arois from the Golus, help us out in our Avodas Hashem, please. So when we say this bakosha tipul aleim Marosov afachad, so the seder is we should say first the kroivim and then the rechoikim. But the answer is no, because first the Eibishter helps us with the rechoikim. These things that mamash not shaykh for Yid Rachmana litzlan. These challenges that really doesn't make sense for Yid to be nichshel. So that's the first Siur we get from the Eibishter. And then even the smaller potatoes, the smaller nisyonis, the nisyonis that an average person is nichshel ba easily. So even that, we asked the Eibishter that we shouldn't, that he should save us from those two. He should save us, makal mikal koil. So therefore, we first say, tipel aleimei mosa for the rechoikim, and then we ask even more, menakal alakovet, also for the ra, which is carved to us. And the Eibishter helps that eventually we conquer our Yetzer Hara completely. When mahapachet latoiv sur meirav aseh toiv, we make that out. Should be toiv b'chol avavcha b'shnei tzarecha. I see we have a few minutes left. Should I tell up Sachsuda Shemaisa?
Why not?
Okay. From Shmuz v'Sipurim, already talking us a story from Rabbi Folakan. Bedav beten beim Eibishten. Bedav beten beim Eibishten. Kadosh Baruch Hu oizre. Bedav beten beim Eibishten, the Eibishter helft. There was a chassid from the Mosul of Chernobyl. He lived in Chachnik. Name of the city. I guess they made a lot of tchotchkes there. So in Chachnik, he would, whenever he would come, for putting on the video, I wouldn't want to miss the opportunity that we're learning the Sicha. In Chachnik, there was a chassid Rebbe, and he would always host his Rebbe when the Rebbe would come, Remotala Chernobyl. And one time, Remotala sent a word that he's coming to Chachnik, and he's not staying by the Rebbe. And if Rebbe wants to come to see the Rebbe, he should send over 2,000 ruble, otherwise he shouldn't dare to come. Rebbe made a cheshbon if he sold his house, and he sold a farm, and he sold a cow, and he sold a goat. Maximum, it was 800 ruble. The geld. So not only did he lose the schus of having the Rebbe in his house, but can't even go see the Rebbe. For everyone, it was a simcha v'sasan. For him, it was an unbelievable yogim v'anocha. He was so upset, he cried and he cried. If you only gave me a couple of dollars, I could go see my Rebbe. And he cried, and it hurt. Okay. The Rebbe came, the Rebbe left, he never saw the Rebbe. A few weeks later, and there was a whole group of soldiers that showed up in Chachnik. And Kedarkim in those days, the general went to every house, and then you have to have 2 soldiers, 3 soldiers, 4 soldiers, every house. As long as they're going to be there. They're there for a few days, middle of the night, the general says, we're going. Okay, everyone jumps out of bed, they get dressed, they all march out of town. And 2 soldiers, and remember that they're the ones that are carrying the box. They didn't have credit cards. They were sent on a mission with a box with rubles, money, where they could buy ammunition, provisions, food. Okay, that's very important. They go back to city. But they didn't have addresses the Jews didn't have an address in the house. They didn't remember. The 2 soldiers remembered they were in a Jewish house. Okay, so they went. There was a lot of Jewish homes. They looked in this home and that home. And they went twice to a house on the right and twice in the house on the left, and they never came into the Bettel's house. And couldn't find the money, they left. Next day, the Bettel gets up, and the soldiers are not there, but he sees there's a box. He opens the box, there's a lot of money. Okay, they leave it there. He's not going to touch it. They might come back. A few weeks go by, and they don't come for it. So he goes to the Rebbe. He goes to Chernobyl. They threatened the Motala what to do. The Motala said, I saw that you need to be an Osher Godel. Problem is, you have to ask for it. And you have to ask with an emes. And you were Sameh B'chelke, you were not asking. So I needed to think of Epsan Eitz and Einfall. How can I get you to ask? To ask with an emes, the Eibishter, give you a bracha? And I have, do you see it worked? It worked. There's gebeten, and they should send it to you immediately. Take this money, it's kosher fadint, of course, also from a goy. You're allowed to keep the money. Take that money and go to a big city, and he told them what business to enter, and he entered, he became an Osher God. We have to ask. We have to ask the Eibishter. Tipol Aleim and Marosov Afachad is a nevuah, but also about kosher. We have to ask the Eibishter that we should be able to conquer our 7 nations, and the Eibishter will help from Take and our Avodas Hashem, and also Begashmias, every one of us, that we should ask with the Emes, and the Eibishter be'emes Take b'mevala mishalas lebeinu l'toiva. In the last few minutes, Eden Argolos should be l'chobnei Yisrael hoya oir b'meishvoisem.
Amen. The people dying out of Israel was 7, Taka.
Rahman al-Islam. Yeah, there should be the last 7 Kedoshim, and now we should conquer the Shiva Umas and the Shalosh Umas.
Amen.
Peretz is here. Peretz, you have a minion?
He has 9 people.
And so, okay, fine. There's a 9 in
He davened already, Ma'ariv.
Peretz already davened.
Yeah,
Okay, it's a Kenaz on Kaddish.
right,
We'll have an extra Kaddish.
right.
Okay, so
Shkoyach. Shkoyach, gute Nacht.
okay, great. Okay, what was it announced in Shabbos about the Fabrengen?
Yes, and you have regards from Rabbi Chazan, the one that used to be a Sholem Eshiv,
Oh, very nice.
because he's brother-in-law with Shmuel Friedman.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't
Very
know
nice.
that the two wife are sisters. So he couldn't stay in the Shlichus in Russia. So he came to America. He's living in Monsey now.
He
And
was
he
here
came-
for Shabbos?
He came Shabbos especially to see you.
Oh,
you're not here.
Yeah.
So he also
Especially
for bringing a little
Gaman.
bit.
Very nice.
Yeah. If I bring a little bit
Very
also.
nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so
So-
Tuesday night we're having a big Fabrengen Be'ezus Hashem Yisborich,
Yes, I answered.
and Rabbi Zellickson will Fabreng, Rabbi Zellickson will Fabreng, and then Wednesday night we'll see. I think if the Olam wants, interested, we could learn one of the 2 Maimonim. L'mashal, the Maimon Tovshin Mem Gimel Basa Lagani, very Geschmacka Maimon and a very avoided Maimon.
Right. Okay, Bezrat Hashem.
Okay, sehr gut. Gute Nacht.
Shkoyach, thank you so much.
All too.
Thank you.
All
Thank you.
too.
When is the Rav coming back? When is David Sabger coming back? He's coming. Did you see him there?
I saw him, yeah. I saw him, he looks good. Who wouldn't look good when it's 80 degrees, 70 degrees in January? Who wouldn't look good?
We're going to the store. This lady there. Loves it. She was so verspatzt.
Yeah. Yes.
Spanish guy who was attending to it, he was, where were you? So she started to say, she didn't get so much by so she
You
must have
go
gone
for an
to
ultraviolet.
it. I think that's what she did.
It could be.
So it's like, they come already for schwarz.
Yeah. I've never had a special desire to be super tan. If I get tan, good. If I don't, then I don't.
No,
Never has been a priority of mine.
Eventually, it works on your skin.